everyone, my name is Ari. Welcome back to my podcast, Surrounded by Addicts. And I'm going to talk about my experience with IOP, or Intensive Outpatient Therapy. So, a couple months before I turned 23, I was going through probably one of the darkest times of my life. I do not I don't really know how it started, why it started, or what triggered it, if anything could have triggered it, but a couple months before I turned 23, I was just going through a really dark, depressive state of mind. It was getting progressively worse, and I really wasn't telling the people around me how bad it had gotten. And I was struggling hard with it. I was breaking down pretty much every single day. I did not really know what to do about it. I did already have a one-on-one therapist, but it just didn't feel like anything was helping my situation. Eventually, I had a severe mental breakdown to the point where I could simply just not hide it from, at the very least, my boyfriend, because I live with him. It's kind of hard to hide a mental breakdown from the person that you live with. So I spoke to him about where my mind was at for where I was at for those couple of months, and he advised me to seek out a higher form of therapy than what I was already doing. And when I reached out to my therapist, she agreed that what I was going through was out of her realm of expertise. And then I also spoke to my mom, who agreed to even help me find a higher form of therapy. So the higher form of therapy was IOP. I did go through a facility that is based in my state. It's about an hour-ish and a half away. And to start off, my IOP was all online. I did not live at the facility. I know there's some programs where you can live there, where you basically get a note to not go into work for however long the program is, and you live there full time and all that. I did not do that. For my IOP, I still was working my normal hours. I lived my normal day to day life, except for, of course, I had to adhere to the IOP schedule. What was the IOP schedule? So I don't know how common this is, at least for the facility that I went through. We had mandatory group meetings 3 days a week for 3 hours with one break in between. And then you also met up with your one on one therapist once a week for 1 hour. Your one on one therapist was assigned to you. You saw the same therapist every week. And for the group meetings, whoever was hosting the meetings would be the therapist that you have. It rotated on a weekly basis. Sometimes you would see the same therapist every single week. Other times it would be a different therapist. There was a therapist that I only had once, never saw her again throughout the entire treatment plan. I was in IOP for 4 months. I started in late-ish October and I ended in, I believe, the middle of February was my discharge date. So, like I said, for about 4 months I was in this program. And right off the bat, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, and PTSD. I will admit I wasn't quite surprised by the anxiety or the depression diagnosis. It was just one of those things where it was nice to have professional confirmation that I was struggling with that, but it was something that I already had a feeling was wrong. I feel like everybody kind of knows what anxiety feels like, and I could just tell by talking to people in my life, people that I've met, that I had a more extreme form of anxiety. It wasn't normal. Like, I knew pretty early that I struggled with anxiety. Depression, kind of the same deal. I knew that some of my thoughts were very abnormal, and I knew that it wasn't healthy for me to have a certain mindset compared to other people that I spoke to. So it was just one of those I knew it moments. Like, I knew I was going to get diagnosed with anxiety and depression. The PTSD one did surprise me because I always just associated PTSD with veterans. So when I was talking to the different therapists and the different, like all the different people that I met through the facility, and I got diagnosis back, I was like, oh, okay, that's new. Wasn't expecting that one. But yes, right off the bat, I got diagnosed with those three things. So, to take you a little bit through the process of signing up. So, before I found the facility that I ended up going through, I contacted a crisis center that's based in my city, and I had a representative from that facility, from the crisis center, come over to my apartment to do an kind of like a intake interview, except this intake interview was for them to help me find a facility that best matched with the type of help that I needed. So it was a get to know you interview. And I believe the interview lasted for a couple of hours. She spoke to me, and because my boyfriend was home came home somewhat during the interview, she also asked him a couple of questions and took his perspective into consideration. And from there, the crisis center lady referred me to the mental health facility that I ended up going through. And from the facility, I had an intake interview virtually with my case manager, the psychiatrist, and my one-on-one therapist, all within like a week of signing up. And that was the start of my program. And like I said, within that first week or first 2 weeks, that's when I got the diagnosis back. Not only did I do the intake interviews with the two or three representatives from the facility, I did have to take multiple DAS, what are those called? Quizzes. I had to take multiple DAS quizzes over and over again. Each of them were slightly different, but they all came back with pretty much the same result, which is why I got diagnosed. But so first 2 weeks of being a part of the program was just a lot of intake, a lot of get to know you, and a lot of figuring out where my baseline was and what type of program and what type of treatment plan would work best for me. So, what they decided would work best for me was a combination of CBT therapy, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. They are pretty similar because DBT is derived from CBT, so they kind of have the same pillars as far as values and goals, but what they are meant to treat and how they go about treating those things is a little bit different. So my program was a mix of both of those two things.
Hey, I'm Shailene Kite. I'm a Linehan Board certified DBT therapist. I'm also a trainer. CBT stands for Cognitive Behavior Therapy. It's pretty popular and well known. It's very much focused on change. And the idea is if you can change your thoughts, then you can change your behaviors or your actions. DBT stands for Dialectical Behavior Therapy, and it's the gold star treatment for borderline personality disorder. It's also a solid stabilizer for trauma work. DBT pulls from cognitive behavior therapy as well as principles from Zen Buddhism to help clients balance acceptance and change.
My one-on-one therapist, she didn't directly tell me this, but just from my own experience, I felt like she focused more on the CBT side of things because she wanted to help me redirect how negative I was thinking. I told her right off the bat that I had a very pessimistic mindset of the world, of myself, of my own life path, and she wanted to help kind of course correct that. She wanted to help me find a more positive outlook on things, while group therapy helped with more the DBT side of things. And I think just by in its nature, group therapy is a bit better for DBT because when you're dealing with a group of people and you have to discuss really like hard topics, you're kind of forced to be very mindful and be very conscious of what you're saying, how you're saying it. And because IOP can be for any type of problem, like there was people in there that struggled with addictions. There was people in there that were suicidal. There were people in there that were in DV situations. Like you're all in there for different reasons, so it kind of forces you to have a more emotional strength to it, and it really helped with everybody's emotional regulation because you need to be able to talk about these hard subjects, but if you have a difficult time even accepting what you went through, how can you talk about it? So, in my opinion, that's how my treatment was kind of broken up. My one on one therapy was more focused on the cognitive behavioral therapy, while the group sessions were more focused on the dialectical behavioral therapy. And I think this really worked out for me because I think I needed more of a, I guess, personal approach to rewiring my own brain to not be so negative. I think if I was in a group setting trying to untangle my negative mindset when my mindset is different from another person's, so their mindset shift and the one in the mindset shift that I might need are very different. So having my one-on-one therapist focus on that with me was extremely helpful. And because my one-on-one therapist actually used art therapy, she specializes in art therapy, it was even more helpful for me to explain and articulate what I was going through because I didn't have to really talk. I was able to, like I said, we completed assignments that we were given, and I was able to use my freedom of expression to convey the messages that I wanted her to understand. And she would also even help me interpret why there was like subtle differences in what I was drawing, like why I used a certain color, why I used a certain shape, to help me break down even more why I had a certain attitude or mindset about certain things. Of course, she was able to really dive deep into how my childhood really affected me in my mindset, and it was extremely just helpful and kind of astonishing how much one-on-one help with a professional therapist helped me understand why I was the way I was. I would say she helped bridge the gap between what happened to me and how did I get here. So like that middle portion that I couldn't understand, like that bridging that gap, that's what she provided for me. And because she helped me bridge that gap, then I would be able to work on, okay, I understand what happened to me. I understand who I am now. I also understand how everything progressed from point A to point B. Now I can help myself manage being from point B to point C in the future. For the group therapy, it was definitely, like I said, more broad, more general. We spoke more about concepts, different physiological internal conflicts. It was more broad categories that we kind of broke down, and because you did work on it, the broad topic would be special. The broad topic would be specified to your connection to it in your work, and so when you articulate that to the rest of the group, you're all connecting in these different ways. Group therapy started as a broad general topic, and then through the assignment you broke that down until to how it fit you or how it affected you, and you would discuss from there. I started IOP in late October and I finished in the middle of February. So in total, I completed 123 days. And overall, what I got out of this IOP treatment, it completely changed my life, honestly. It gave me coping skills. It made me feel way less alone than what I felt being in that group setting and hearing people from different backgrounds, walks of life, but we're all talking about the same problems just from a different perspective. And overall, it just helped me make sense of everything that I went through as a kid, and it helped me feel more secure of who I am as a person. Before IOP, I just felt really stuck because I felt that I didn't understand my own thought process, even though I was always I was always the type of person to be very self aware, and that's why it frustrated me even more that I had a hard time understanding how my past got me to this point and all that. So overall, once I graduated the program, because like I said, I graduated in middle of February, and now we're beginning of July. So I've been done with it for quite a while now. And overall, I can say that I am a more confident person. I would say I'm also more content. I don't like saying the word I'm happy because I feel happy is just one of those emotions that it's meant to be fleeting. Like, you're not meant to be constantly happy, you're not meant to be constantly sad either. But I would say that I'm confident, I am content, and I'm accepting of what happened in my past. Before IOP, I kind of just let the ripple effect of my past always get underneath my skin. I can never fully let go of what happened. And it kept me on this hamster wheel of sadness and doom and pessimism, to be honest, where I don't think I would be able to really live on like that. That mindset, I feel like, for almost anybody is very destructive and it's very demotivating. So going through this program and finally being able to see myself and see my future past what happened to me, I think as time goes on will open me up to a lot more possibilities and opportunities that if I didn't go through IOP, it wouldn't have happened. If I remember, I will try to find some of the activities that we completed just so I can give you a visual of the type of like things that we would be assigned to do. I should also mention that I completed IOP without taking any medication. Like I said, I did meet with a psychiatrist twice, once at the beginning during my intake, and then again I met up with her like a couple weeks or months into the program. I met with her twice, that's all I remember. Almost right off the bat, I was offered to take medications. Of course, I would have had to see the psychiatrist more frequently than what I did. But I rejected. I don't think I'm the type of person that needs medication. I do understand that some people do. I'm just more of the try to find a holistic approach to my problems first. And because me being 23 when I signed up for IOP was the first time I really sought out an intensive plan. I didn't want to jump to using medication right away because I wanted to see if what I was going to do would be enough. Like, I wanted to make sure that I put in full effort into my own healing and recovery without medication so that if that didn't work, medication would be the next necessary step. And to be honest, dealing with medication, I truly just don't want to deal with it. Like, figuring out the dose, remembering to take it, possible side effects, just all that. I truly just didn't want to deal with that because I was working full time on top of doing IOP. I would be very new to taking prescriptions in general and not fully understanding how those medications would affect me. I didn't want the medication to be just another thing that could go wrong. So, of course, this does not apply to everybody. This is just my experience. I completed IOP without medications, and I have not sought to take medications after graduating, not at all during graduating, and uh, I've never taken medication for any of the problems that I was diagnosed with before the program. Um, I was asked, like I said, on a couple of different occasions if I was sure, but I insisted that I wanted my treatment to be as holistic as possible and that I was more than willing to do whatever therapy assignments, etc., to get the end result. And if I felt like I wasn't improving, or if my therapist, my one-on-one therapist, If my one-on-one therapist seriously recommended medication to me after I was already in the program for a couple of months, then I would have changed my mind. My one-on-one therapist, other than the first couple weeks I was there, did not suggest I take medications because she saw steady improvement with what I was going through. Same thing with my case manager. He also did not recommend that I take medication. And when I saw the psychiatrist for the second time, she also did not recommend medication use. That was just my experience. No medications at all. So since I've been graduated, most, if not all, of the coping skills that I learned throughout therapy, I still keep in practice. I will say that my anxiety has significantly decreased, and I don't want to say that therapy is the magic pill, because if you don't do the work while you're in the program, it's really hard to reap the benefits of it. I put in the work to heal. And one of the things that I told my one on one therapist right off the bat was that I wanted to significantly decrease the amount of anxiety that I felt on a day to day basis. I wanted to reduce the intensity, I wanted to reduce the frequency of it. I just wanted it to be as small of a problem as it could be. So because I was very intentional with that at the beginning of the program, now that I have been graduated for a couple of months, I can say that for the most part, this is the best I've ever been able to handle it. Um, a lot of the things that she taught me or helped me to instill, like the habits that she made sure that I would keep up with, I still do. I learned that through therapy, one of the things that helped me the most with dealing with my anxiety is honestly just telling myself that I don't have anxiety over whatever I'm getting anxiety from. I also will like talk myself through a problem just out loud. I notice within myself that if I was just keeping all the thoughts inside my head, it was really easy for me just to let the thoughts race around, go crazy, become really exaggerated, and would cause me to panic even more than I already was. So, forcing myself to put into verbal words where other people could hear me, even if no one was around, forcing myself to vocalize it and make sense of it helped me the most to reduce the anxiety that I was having. And because I was able to reduce the anxiety that I was having, it of course positively impacted how severe I suffered from depression. Anxiety really held me back from a lot of things, a lot of positive conversations, a lot of positive interactions, a lot of possible positive opportunities for me. So, just by nature of reducing the anxiety side of things, my depression also became better. But again, it was one of those things that I was intentional about working on. It did not just happen. It took literally 4 months at the very least to get an understanding of it. And then after graduating, continuously doing the habits and the coping skills that will keep it at bay. Talking myself out loud through my problems, articulating myself, verbally calming myself down, verbally having to explain to myself what I'm doing really helped to reduce my anxiety. Also, I don't remember exactly what this technique is called, but it's kind of like a factory reset on your breath. It's basically where like right in the middle of your chest, you kind of just like hit yourself not incredibly hard, but you hit yourself in the middle of your chest and there's like a nerve or something around there where it forces you to breathe a different way just for a moment. It forces you to calm down. So whenever I'm overly freaking out or if I'm really having trouble breathing through a problem, I will just once in a while just like a quick. One of the biggest things that she told me to do to help reduce my anxiety was to also simply just be creative more often. Since she was an art therapist, I told her pretty soon after meeting her that I really loved art. I just didn't really give myself the time to be creative. And as she got to know me, of course, she kind of put it together that I didn't really participate in hobbies that I enjoyed. I have a lot of hobbies that I don't mind doing, I just never picked them up. So she encouraged me, and some of my assignments were to simply make something. Didn't have to be anything crazy, it did not have to be good, it just had to be to make something. And as time went on and we would discuss about what I made and when I felt ready to make it, because I feel like a lot of artists understand that it's hard to want to make something for yourself, but it's easy to want to make something for others. And I always struggled with making something for myself. She would have me explain why I felt ready to paint, why I felt ready to draw, why I was in the mood to do whatever craft it was, and kind of understand the atmosphere, my mood, all the things that made me decide to do art. And she encouraged me to try to make my living situation, to try to just make my environment more arts and craft friendly. Whatever that meant for me, that's what she wanted me to do. Podcasting has been one of my most consistent creative outlets that I've been able to have fun with. And I think it just helps that if I can put myself out there on the internet, it's really hard to have anxiety about anything else when I'm out there on the internet. So just by branching out of my comfort zone, creating something that is completely under my control has been really helpful in reducing my anxiety, and it gives me another thing to look forward to. And just by that, depression and anxiety have been lessened, not just because of podcasting, other work that I've been doing on myself, for myself, within my relationship, etc. But just as an easy example, podcasting has been really helpful with that creative outlet that I clearly needed to fill, that I wasn't prioritizing before I started IOP. She encouraged me as well, and just the group therapy meetings in general encouraged me to start more conversations with people. They didn't call it rejection therapy, like where you just ask somebody a question, and if they say no, that's like the only worst thing that they can do. So you get over that fear of rejection. But both of them, well, both settings encouraged me to branch out and talk to people. With the PTSD treatment, simply understanding what PTSD was and how I fell into that category of having PTSD, I can pinpoint those times and those moments in my behavior where I'm being impacted by my childhood trauma. And because I can point it out and call it out, I can proceed with caution to get myself out of that negative mindset.
Thank you for listening to Surrounded by Addicts. Remember to take life one day at a time and to enjoy the little things in life. Stay tuned for the next episode.